Time has come once again to speak as witches and wizards and spirits do. I'm Daniel Dubois,
I'm Michaela Gavinstone.
and we're your hosts for the Think Like a Wizard podcast. Welcome to season 5, episode 7, Narada Muni. So, we've done a meditation, we've done ChatGPT introductions, and today Narada wants to do his own introduction. So that's how we're starting. I am Narada Muni. I am he who travels between worlds, the master of the Vina, the bringer of messages, the teacher of lessons. I worked this week with Daniel because I wanted to bring him to the different worlds of the crystals. I know this is probably not what people were expecting of a work I would do with someone, but it's about teaching lessons and it's about showing there's more to the universe than just the one plane you live on. Well, that was quick. And then he was done.
Okay.
So,
Well, comprehensive. Working with crystals is always a journey if you really pay attention to it. So I'm looking forward to hearing about yours.
yeah. So this has been my week with Narada Devi. So one of the first things I did was, well, actually, the first thing I did was start hanging out with my little sister. So that was an interesting thing. We started watching the BBC version of the show Ghosts, because there's also the one made by Paramount. So we started watching the British one. And so she would come over every night and we would watch that. And then when we got to the end of that, we started watching, what did we watch? We started watching The Uncanny Counter with on Netflix. But before that, actually, I forgot, we had watched another show called, I think it's In Limbo. Anyways, it's an Australian, another show with ghosts, and only the one person can see the ghost. It actually turned out to be a kind of a sneaky PSA about depression, because the big mystery was trying to figure out why the guy committed suicide, and he kept being evasive on the topic. So he kept trying to do other things. Oh, maybe it was this. This is why I can't go to heaven. This is why I'm stuck here in the world. And so the 6 episodes were basically the guy trying to do all these things that the guy said he needed to move on. Only to find out in the end there was no, he just had depression and that's why he killed himself. But anyway, maybe that ties in
Oh,
somewhere. Anywho, so yeah, I hadn't spent a lot of time with my little sister, so it was kind of make up for lost time almost kind of a deal, which was interesting. So Narada said, like, yeah, just do what you need to do with her. So that was the first few days. And then after that, he brought me to a crystal shop and I bought a bunch of crystals, which, you know, my introduction was I walked in, there was pendulums on the counter. He goes, okay, go get a pendulum. So I picked up a pendulum, one that seemed like it wanted to work with me, because that was the first thing. Find one that wants to work with you. And then I went through the shop with the pendulum, seemed to get reactions from the crystals to see which ones to buy. So, but that surprised me because I was like, well, I mean, I guess it's not something I should be surprised by, right? But yet on this, because I don't really associate crystals with gods to begin with or named spirits for some reason, even though you would think I would, but I don't know. Michaela looks like she's up
no.
to something there.
I am up to something. I'm just bringing in my.
Oh, yes, that's the new one, eh? So for those who
It's a
can't see,
pendulum.
yeah,
It's
Michaela's
very
getting a pendulum.
fancy. There's a crown. There's pentagrams. There's all kinds of symbology on here. And I'm going to leave that word where it went.
Mm,
It's very heavy too. Anyway, yes, you mentioned pendulums, and so this
mhm,
one called to me. It was
yeah,
actually under a bunch of other things, and I
mm,
just kind of put my fingers in, and it came up. So that's how we found each other.
mm. Yeah. And I also ended up buying a kind of a mystery bag of crystals,
Hey, that's fun.
and that got me a bunch of crystals that I'm working with this week actually. And it got me, so you're not gonna be able to see it on here, but it's a big spherical crystal,
Mm.
and this is now imbued with pretty much the four basic elements of alchemy: the earth, wind, fire, water.
Can
Took a
you
few
tell
days.
people what the crystal is?
I don't remember what
Yeah.
stone this is. I know the feature. I know the qualities of it is it provides energy, like it increases your energy. I had it somewhere, but now I don't remember what the stone it is. I'll figure it out again later. Not very helpful for a podcast on stuff like this. So now when I look at this, a brown stone with flecks and stuff like that, but now in my mind's eye, it's got like the symbols for the four elements, and that's where the elements kind of like emanate from. And then it's got my symbols for knowing and doing on it. But yeah, so looking at it, right, it just looks like a spherical crystal. And but when I'm looking at it in my mind's eye, I'm seeing all these lines around it and symbols now,
Hmm.
and elements kind of like being vented. So I'm still actually not allowed to use it yet because it's still not quite what do you call it there? It's not quite finished cooking on the spiritual
Not
level.
fully energized.
Yeah. So, but yeah, the big thing with Narad is he went big on the crystals. But I had shared before on the podcast, right, that I had a crystal had I was shown to work with crystals, and I was invited by a crystal to go to its inner world. And after that, I could read my teacher's mind.
Mm.
So, kind of what we did is Narada basically, as his role of going into different worlds, brought me to the inner world of the crystals. And this led to like a lot of interesting dreams. And when I think about it in retrospect, all the dreams had like a red tint to it.
Hmm.
So the first dream was a kind of like a murder mystery kind of a thing, trying to solve something that went wrong. It wasn't specifically a murder. It was just that kind of sense. Like it was in a like a Edwardian setting. So after the Victorian era, the Edwardian era, that kind of thing. And then where you get a lot of the old mystery novels there, like from Agatha Christie, those kinds of settings.
Hmm.
And then it went on to a time traveling thing, which was the next dream. And that was with the next stone. And then with the next one after that, I think it started to get more magical, but it was always visiting the inner world, and they always had that red tint to them, kind of marking them from, and they felt different. Like so, on top of starting to astral travel, I was also traveling to the inner worlds of the crystals, and each crystal had added a new lesson. So it was about looking at what you're really doing. Do you understand what you're really doing? How does it link to other things? Because the time travel dream was about avoiding a catastrophe, but after 6 attempts of time traveling to fix it, it wasn't working. And I was the last person to try time travel. And so, and we were doing it what do you call it? The difficult way. We were waiting for opportunities to time travel to show up. So, like either natural moments in time where like a portal for time travel for to another era would show up. And we tried to fix everything. But by then I was like, okay, no, that's not working. We should actually see what leads specifically to the event and try to track them down and try to stop them instead of trying to go back in time to do them.
So instead of fishing the people out of the water, you go upstream to find out who's pushing them in.
Right.
Okay.
So it became basically starting to look at things as to why they happened instead of just scurrying about trying to fix it, but actually saying, well, why is this like this? Instead of going, oh my God, we just got to deal with this, we got to deal with it. It's like, no, no. Well, actually stop the problem before it gets to something bigger Instead of panicking, we'll look at not panicking, but basically the idea is to look at the truth of something before it spins out of control. And that's
And
been
that
a lot of the
there's a
work
lot
that
of lessons in that
yeah,
one. There's a lot of lessons there. Um, what comes to me is, first of all, it doesn't have to be hard.
right.
It gets to be easy if you choose that.
Hmm.
And looking at the problem, the symptom, the event is already too late. And looking up or sideways, like whatever direction it is,
Hmm.
looking past that to what caused it is something that I think before diving into a magical practice, there's something in that. There's like, are you sure where you're diving in now is where you
Right,
want to be? Or is there something you can do more? You can make a bigger impact, a greater outcome by addressing something earlier in that chain. And that might sound like it's an impossible thing to do, but we both know it isn't because there's
right.
nothing that's impossible. It might be improbable, but it's not impossible. You just have to be prepared to find it and go do it.
Yeah. Well, Narada thumbed up on that, did a thumbs up on that one.
Very
So,
cool.
and yeah, that is kind of the goal of it is to, before you jump into magic, like, yeah, it's the, we had said it there. So power, there's the expression, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely, but that's not really true, right? It's power reveals. One of the things it reveals is that power attracts people who are corruptible.
Yes. If you are corruptible, then you will be corrupted and it will be revealed. And this
Mm,
is pertinent on all the realms right now, I would say. But look at the planet and yep, we got that
mm,
everywhere. That's exactly what you're looking at. And
mm.
it's like watching a train wreck in slow motion because you can see the things happening and wonder why. But at the same time, if you're prepared to look, you can see where the origins were.
Right.
And it was in the success of people hiding what was true. And then sitting on top of that hidden truth, wielding power like a big sword to keep everybody
Right.
away from it. And we all kind of let that happen. By we
Mm,
all, I mean people as a species for hundreds of
yeah.
years, thousands of years.
Right.
It's not a new thing. We've
Yeah.
been building to this point. This is now the reveal that we have to deal with because it's like, well, you can pretend it's not there. There are plenty of people doing that, and that will get you exactly the effort you're putting in as a return. You can run around like the chicken that says the sky is falling.
Yeah.
Accurate, not helpful. Or you can
Right.
decide what is your what is your role? What is your path? What are you going to do given the reveal and the information that you have, given your awareness of the magical practices that are available to you and a higher level of possibility? What are you going to choose? And that
Yeah.
was totally channeled.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's an interesting thing about channeling with Narada Muni I'm learning today.
Hmm.
So the intro, right? For if you're paying attention, right? At the end, I stuttered but he was done, right? So it's I'm going to say what I need to say, and you can work from there. And part of it, right? Because he is also known as a trickster, or has been known as a trickster. There is the idea of okay, for me specifically, right? Because I still have an issue hanging on about the, I don't like spirits leaving me high and dry when they start something, which is really just the spirits going, okay, now you can continue. But I was viewing it as being left high and dry.
Perception.
Yeah. So I kind of had that moment when it stopped. I was like, okay, why am I not getting anything anymore? That doesn't seem like a complete introduction to me, but what, you know? So then I kind of had to, okay, we're done, and just accept that is what it was. But it's leading to a discussion. So that was the purpose of it. And usually when you're channeling, only so much information can get to you because you need to be able to process that information. And sometimes getting all the information is not what's necessary or important. It's the
It
getting the wheels
also
turning.
it depends on how you're channeling too, because when I do it on the podcast with you,
Right.
literally, I don't know what I'm going to say, but I know when the time is for me to say something, and I just start talking, and I'm hearing it for the first time too. So I'm not actually processing, I'm putting it out there exactly as it comes. I did have an interesting experience day before yesterday
Mm-hmm.
where I was doing human design for someone, and it was for their child.
Right.
And it's an adult child. And as I was doing this human design, I was also channeling at the same time and getting images. And oh, they were hard. There were some very tough images here.
Mm-hmm.
And my instinctive sort of mundane response was,
Right.
oh, that is too much to tell a mother. Like you can't do that. Soften it. So I tried to soften the image and I said it, and we both looked at each other, and it was like, okay, that didn't land, did it? Let me tell you what I actually saw. And then I gave it to the person in the full color of what I saw, and she looked quite startled and then said, that's exactly right. That is
Right.
exactly what's been happening. But I got in my own way for a brief moment there,
Right.
trying to soften what was coming through instead of just giving it.
Yes.
So sometimes just channeling and putting it out there unfiltered
Mm-hmm.
is the most well received simply because it's accurate. If I try and put
Yeah.
my own lens on top of it, I might think that person needs it to be softened when they don't. And it's not for me to decide.
Right.
So that whole channeling experience is really interesting. It can be, particularly when your own bias gets in the way
Yes.
of like, well, no, you're supposed to keep working with me until we're finished. Or no, that's too much for that person. I can't
Mm.
tell them that. And it's like, well, yeah, but they came to me and this is what I do. So yeah,
Right.
I can tell them that because that's what they came for. But I was normally I'm really kind of hyped up at the end of a human
Mm.
design session. Like it feeds my energy.
Right.
That time I felt like I had just been wrung out. I was like, oh boy, I need to really, just go somewhere and offload this. It was a lot. So that was a very intense experience. And there was a lot of layers going on. But the channeling was a huge part of how that went. It was a very interesting experience.
Mm. Yeah. That is. Yeah. That's the whole. That's his whole point. Is all right. He wants it put out kind of this way. So he teaches, and he doesn't discriminate against who he'll teach a lesson to in the stories, right? Because he cursed Vishnu because of Vishnu's behavior. So even though he was a devotee of Vishnu, that didn't stop him from cursing Vishnu to teach him a lesson.
Right. And you see that experience you
Yeah.
had just for a brief moment there of you would I could see for the
Mm.
listener, you couldn't see this, but Danielle was very quickly trying to figure out how to phrase this. So that would have come from your lens, right?
Right.
That would have been exactly what I was just talking about, your bias.
Mm.
Whereas in the end, it was just, okay, I got to give it to you how it came out. This is what I got. This is what you're
Yeah.
getting. And that's exactly in real time what I was just talking about. And it's so funny when you get that experience because if you
Yeah.
notice it for the listener, if if you are somebody who can channel, whether it's words like I do now
Mm.
or images, which I get a lot, um, if you try and deliver it differently, you're going to get tripped up. It's going to
Yeah.
feel awkward and it's
Hmm.
not going to land. And you are so going to know it that it's just, you almost feel like you lied, right? It feels inauthentic. And that's because it is. You tried to make it different. You tried to
Yep.
soften it or make it more palatable, more understandable. And it's not your call. You don't get to decide that, which is, it can be bloody tough though. If you've got to deliver something that's really not pleasant
Right.
to tell to somebody, whew, you got to be really solid in your foundation for that one. it takes a little balancing before you start. A little mindfulness, a little meditation, little like offloading any sneaking biases that may be coming in at the time, and awareness of them before you start. And then you'll have a smoother path for yourself.
Right. It's funny because you described basically everything I felt this episode so far.
Okay. Well, I just channeled that too. So
Yeah.
gave it
Well,
you
that's
as
the
it
thing.
came
Like,
in.
uh, his whole point is because you almost want to say the divine punisher, but not in the sense of corporal punishment, but in the sense of letting you bring out your own discipline in yourself.
How about
That's what it is.
divine consequences? How about
Yeah.
that?
He's the deliverer of divine consequences. That is a good wording.
Because consequences are neutral, but they're
Mm,
inevitable.
right.
And they are absolutely tied to whatever the action was or inaction was.
Hmm.
So consequences are good.
Yeah. And this is a me thing. So you know, I'm still kind of marveling at, in a good way, marveling at how we're getting these named spirits come in and they're giving us these deviations from the stories, but
Hmm.
they still make sense for that being. It's just seeing it from a different lens.
Yes, Lilith.
Mm,
It, I've been working with Lilith today, and so she's just kind of tapped me on the shoulder and
mm,
said, "Yo, hello, that would be me," because we all have a different version of Lilith. We
right.
all have a different sense of the archetype of what is Lilith. And if you were raised in a strict
Mm,
Christian um, background, then you either don't know of Lilith or she's demonized. You know,
right.
she's got horns and she does bad things and eats children and all kinds of stuff. That is a patriarchal concept of Lilith, if ever there was one. That is a fear-based, we can't handle this much woman kind of response, right? And then to others, she's the dark mother, she's the breaker of chains,
Mm,
she's the redeemer of the overlooked. There's a great many archetypes. And what you were just saying was
yeah.
that the spirits that show up here are bringing different archetypes. They're not following, you can't Google it and there you go, that's what we're talking about. You can, and some of the elements will be there, but that's not what's presenting.
Yeah. Because it's interesting, right? And I think this is going to be a big point here is that, and we've talked about this before, right? Like talking about when we had Ryobu or Fujin showing up as an Oni and
Mhm.
then kind of taking the expansion. I mean, like, well, Onis represent their demons, and then we look at even the idea of the devil, in hell, and even his demons making people suffer. But it's like, but that's their task assigned to them. They're not just randomly roaming the planet punishing people or doing anything. They're tasked to punish the wicked. That's their job, you know.
They're bringing the
Yeah, they're
consequences.
bringing the divine consequences. It's not like, I mean, you could probably argue that they have the personality that allows them to do it. They're still doing it
Right.
because they're asked to do it.
But that's also it's an inevitability, just like you were saying earlier, of power corrupts
Right.
and it corrupts if you are corruptible.
Hmm.
And if the demons are open for this, if they're available to deliver those kind of consequences, then I would say it comes at a cost for the
Right.
demon. So they are actually prepared to do you a service and they are prepared to pay for doing that service.
Yeah.
Now, that is a very different look at a demon that
Hmm.
literally just dropped in for me. But when you look at soul contracts, for
Right.
example, and you look at people, oh, this is there's a lot coming in right now. You look at people in your life who come and go, people who come and they stay and they stay and they stay. Anyway, people that come to your life, the experiences with them are different, right? And some,
Hmm.
they are just painful. It's awful. And you're left wondering, what did I do to deserve that? And if you look at it from a soul contract
Hmm.
perspective, there is every likelihood that your souls agreed to this before coming here.
Right.
And that soul said, oh, You need this lesson? Okay, I will do that for you. And so they took on the role of demon, if you will, and it costs them something because
Right.
they now have to pay that back. They got to
Mhm.
balance that. But they were prepared to do it for you.
Yeah.
So that's actually, you can go with me here because this is what I'm getting. It's pretty much an act of love to do that. Now I know that's a heck of a step, and a lot of people aren't going to be able to go there with me, but just follow what I was saying. You might need to listen to it again because I'm not saying you got to turn around and say thank you to your abuser, but look at it in a different light.
Yeah.
It's not that this person came to do terrible things to you because Nina, or
Mm.
it's not because you murdered somebody in a previous life. I hear that one a lot, and it's
Mm.
like, oh, seriously. That may be a thing, but usually it isn't. Usually it's a contract
Mm.
where you needed something and that soul said, I'll do it for you. And you do it for them at some point, whatever that is. So putting the whole sort of negative power into it of this terrible thing happened to me and now I have to carry it as a burden. No, that's exactly what you don't do. It's not a burden, it's a lesson. So, what is it that you can take
Mm.
from that lesson that will progress you, that will evolve you, so you don't have to keep going through that shit? Because, bad things happen and they are bad, and that's undeniable, and we're not going to change that. But what you do with it is the key.
Right.
Whew, there you go.
Well, it's good because this leads us to, and I didn't think we would ever go here on this podcast, but spiritual warfare, i.e., that it's complete bullshit. Think about what we just talked about, and then think back. Spiritual warfare doesn't exist. That's not what's happening. People are presenting it to you like that. And yes, it's usually an evangelical thing, and it's how many worshipers can I get by making them think everything else is evil. But again, demons, Satan, whatever. If you look at them as the punishers, they're asked to do it. They're not going ha 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 muho ha ha. I'm gonna, we're gonna just be against everything that's good and punish people for no reason. That's not what's happening. But that's what's being called spiritual warfare. People are fighting for your souls. And it's like, no, this is not like two warring factions trying to steal as many souls as they can, you know?
And think about it. If they were, let's just go there for a second and
Right.
say, yeah, there are these two warring factions and they've got an arm each and they're both pulling you, trying to get your soul. Doesn't that make them the same?
Right.
Right? Like, how is one better than the other if they're both doing the same thing? It doesn't hold up. If you shine a flashlight on that argument, it is unconscionable bullshit that we have been
Right.
sold for centuries by people who seek to control. It
Mm-hmm.
is absolute nonsense, but they put literally the fear of God in you, right? Like they
Right.
scare the pants off you so that you won't question because you can't question. And if you do question, they're going to tell you that, you're of the devil or
Right.
fire and brimstone for you because you asked a question. Now, the truth behind that is they can't answer the question because it's rubbish. It doesn't exist. It's nonsense. The spiritual warfare for your soul is in your head. It's not in
Right.
your soul.
That's an internal battle. It's not a
And it's one that's created by other people, right? Because if you look at human design, what's in your head is you have the crown and the ajna or the mind, the two centers in the head. One is the ajna is a library to keep all the information that you've learned.
mm,
The crown is your source of inspiration, it's your source of ideas, it's your observatory for what is going on in your environment in the world. And you take that information, you put it into a book, and it goes into the ajna, into the library. None of this is original. None of this is created from you. It's all what you have brought in from outside, and you have done something with it. And that is exactly where all our problems come from on this planet, is the stuff that goes on in your head that has been put there by somebody else. And maybe it felt like yours. Maybe it seemed like it fit, therefore it's
Hmm.
okay, but it was probably unexamined. And you don't have to believe everything you think. You don't have to be stuck in that. This
Right.
is temporary. Books come and go. Even libraries take books out and don't
Hmm.
keep them in stock anymore. You can get rid of old ideas. So the warring factions in the spirit world, they're all put there by those that would control you. It's not true. It's not a thing.
You know, I'm liking where this is going so far.
Cool. So I'm just going with the flow. You
Yeah,
say
I had no
something,
idea today either because
you
I had
say
forgotten a lot
something,
of.
and it sets me
Yeah,
going, and I don't know what it's going to be or when, but here we are.
yeah, because my actually for the last couple of episodes, my brain kind of goes blank before the episode, so it's been pretty interesting. And then it still ends up becoming something, but more and more, I'm not able to get in the way of it. It's
Good.
obviously still lingering in me, but it's getting harder
That's
for me to
great.
get in the way of stuff.
I mean, just think about what I've said, that when I'm channeling,
Right.
I just talk. I don't know what I'm going to say. That took time to get to that level of acceptance of vulnerability. Because I could make a
Mm-hmm.
complete ass of myself. I have no idea, right? I'm just, and I don't know. I could get in my head about it and think, oh, what if I don't get anything coming through, and then I don't contribute to the podcast? What would that be like? And I never think it, because it's going to be there when it needs to be there, and it won't when it isn't.
Right.
But it took time to get to that place. So, for the listener who thinks they might channel, but they're not sure, or they don't feel like they could take that step, because it does put you in a very open and vulnerable
It
place,
does.
practice it. Try
Mm.
it. Practice it with somebody you trust. Practice it. Yeah, I'm going to leave it with that. Somebody you trust. Um, but try and see what it's like when you block it. Doesn't feel very good, I can tell you that. Messes
Mm.
everything up.
That's true.
It really is difficult. Yeah.
You know, it's actually a bad feeling. It really is.
Yeah.
Like to not let it flow properly. So it does tell you how much work you have to do on yourself to exist in such an uncomfortable position.
Well, anything that is stagnant
Mm.
becomes ill.
Yeah.
Think of stagnant water. Is that a healthy environment? No, fish die in it, everything dies in it. The only thing that grows is bacteria. Like it's nasty. Anything that's stagnant. And if you think of how we operate in the world as human beings,
Mm.
stress is actually a fuel. It's not a bad thing.
Hmm.
Stress is great. It's the thing that makes you do things. It's the thing that keeps you moving. It's a problem when it gets locked up, when it does not get used for what it's intended, and you let it build, right?
Right.
Like what's stressful about procrastination? Everything, because you're not moving forward. You're just you're trying to hold back the floodgates, and it doesn't work well.
Right. That actually sends me off on a tangent of whenever you feel anxiety or high adrenaline, go for a walk. But I also had the vision in my head if you're angry with someone, invite them on a walk with you.
Absolutely. That's a great idea.
What came to my mind was just like if you're like, say you're in a relationship and your significant other pisses you off, you just grab them by the hand, go, come on, we're going for a walk right now.
Hmm.
And then you can just do in silence, but you get the you let the adrenaline boost do what it does by doing physical activity, and then your body cleans itself out.
And that brings me to when you've got someone who you don't like, you feel antagonistic towards, usually it's because you feel that they're antagonistic towards
Right.
you, right? Usually there's something that you've perceived. We typically try and get away from that person, block them, get them out of your face, like get me away from that person.
Mm.
But what would happen if you turned toward them to find out what their problem was? And I don't mean, hey, you, what's your effing
Yeah.
problem? Not that, but tempting though it may be. But it's more get to know their perspective a little bit. because the person who you perceive as an enemy may actually end up being your biggest ally.
Right.
You don't know, but it's worth trying. It's worth looking at. It also gives you a different perspective rather than being stuck in the whole, whoa, that person was mean to me, son of a whatever. And you can get really focused in on the perceived slight that may not have actually been intended. And you've put all
Yeah.
your energy there. You don't have any energy left for doing your magical things. You just
Yep.
wasted it. You like peed it all away. Quite
Yeah.
literally.
Yes. It's interesting. It just reminds me of, I told Michaela earlier, I was at a family reunion yesterday. Oh, and before I forget, we're recording this on the second anniversary of the podcast. On the August 10th is the second anniversary, or then is every year, whatever. But yeah, it's the second anniversary of the podcast. That being said,
Happy anniversary.
yes, ooh, happy anniversary to you too.
Yay.
Uh, so what I was going to get onto is I have a cousin who's very much a good storyteller, but he's a millwright and he worked in the trades a lot. So he had a lot of stories of people end up making friendships from like very antagonistic relationships. Like because sometimes it's people don't know how else to express themselves, and then when you call them on it and you don't back down, they're like, oh, okay, kind of, yeah, you made me check myself, thanks. And then they lose their antagonism towards you because they didn't know how to deal with the situation. So a lot of friendships being gained that way. So yeah, like it's but just on that note, that relative of your Métis too, like why don't you like see if you can get a grant and you can like retire from your millwright job and become a storyteller?
It's a gift,
Yeah.
and storytelling is how we learn best. In fact, in things we came up with was, you know, stories are. This was actually before the Lilith work. I was doing
Mm-hmm.
other stuff before then. Um, once a legend, a story, a concept is written down, it ceases to be authentic. It becomes something fixed in,
Right.
in time and space, right? Because you've written it down. It also becomes something that can be easily manipulated and controlled and changed,
Mm-hmm.
such as if you look at the Bible, particularly the Christian Bible, more so even than the Jewish Torah, it has been messed with on notable occasions. We know that it has happened at certain times, and then there's many others that we don't know about. But every time it is rewritten, it's written to control. It's written for a particular outcome. And the
Mm-hmm.
power of the story is that it will lead you to that outcome. So once a story is written, it's starting to be manipulated. So when you have somebody who's a storyteller, that's a phenomenal skill and it's powerful. It's a very powerful tool.
Right.
That is like doing spells in stories, essentially. It's
Yeah.
a very big deal. Think of the Buddha. The Buddha traveled all around India, which must have taken him an awfully long time because it's
Mm-hmm.
a very big place to cover on foot, right?
Yeah.
But he traveled all around India telling stories and teaching through stories. Jesus taught through stories.
Yeah.
Like all of the prophets or the notable teachers, however you want to refer to them,
Mm-hmm.
teach through stories. But there's something unsavory that happens when that story is written down.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to use a modern example. So I want to say possibly for the last 9 years, if you look at popular culture, if you look at video games, movies, comic books, because I like comic books, I kind of more familiar with it there. I don't really buy any anymore, but occasionally I'll read some when I come across them. And so a lot of activism is put in. And like so if you think of the MCU movies, there's a lot of arguments of, well, that's not original to the true material, to the original material. So what started happening was because the MCU was made in like 2008 started, right? And so the activists, the writers who are basically activists would put things in the stories to make them canon. So when people argued about them in the movies, it's like, no, see, go back to this issue, and it's right there. See that panel? Wolverine kissed, Cyclops. So you know what? They're bi and they're hot for each other, and little things like that would get inserted in so
Mm-hmm.
that when it came to making a movie, which would make lots of money, and fans of the comic books would complain, it's like, well, no, look, here it is. It's canon. It's right in the story. So my point being is that once you write it down and people can refer back to it and say, look, here it is, that's where you start destroying the story. Because now people can
Yes.
refer back to it and they can lawyer up, as you call it, lawyer up. You can rule people to death. Go, oh, look, here it is. This is written here, so that's official, and therefore that doesn't matter the new story you're telling or the information that needs to be passed on right now. This is
Mm-hmm.
official. This the now the stagnant story that cannot change.
Right. And so, interpretations may change,
Yeah,
but you can't move anywhere if it's stuck in writing.
right.
And I honestly have no idea where this is going, but it's the second time today it's channeled. So it's
Mm-hmm.
obviously pretty potent stuff. And the first time I heard it coming out
Mm-hmm.
of my own mouth this morning, I was like struck by it. Just, wow, that's true. When you take an oral
Mm-hmm.
tradition and you write it down, that is the start of the decay of those stories. So, what that's going to do for your cousin,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But there's something in it that maybe he needs to like reignite an oral tradition and make it
Right.
stronger, get other people doing that,
Mm-hmm.
telling their stories, because that's the power. Telling your story is so
Yeah.
powerful. If we just give facts, right? This is a fact, that's a fact. Here you go. Just like the school teacher does, right? Learn this thing, repeat it back to me. Okay, you pass. What did you learn in that exchange? Rock all, actually. You learned whatever they think they read, and now you parroted it back. And what? Like, there's no growth in that. It's stagnant water. I
Mm-hmm.
can smell it. It's so stagnant. Like it's a nasty pond of ew. If you dip your foot in there, you're gonna get an infection. It's nasty.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. That's how the written word can be used against you. Now it's very powerful however it's used, right? But
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to stories that teach, it is problematic when they're written down. I'm going to be fascinated to know what the hell to do with this later, but this is what
Yeah.
I'm getting.
Well,
Hmm.
this might help.
I'm going to have to listen to this episode again.
Yeah. This is what I'm getting. Stories are meant to be alive.
Yes, yes.
If they need to
And if
change,
they're
they need to
written, they
change.
become stagnant.
Yeah. If they need to change, they need to change.
Yeah.
As you say when that quote you do from the Buddha all the time. This village needed to hear this story. This village needed to hear this story. Well,
Yep.
if you get stuck on, well, this is what's written right here, and we can't vary from it, or we can't make any changes, then you can't share what these people need.
Exactly. Just imagine how the Buddha's teachings would have gone over if they had to remain the same as the first time he said something. He couldn't evolve it to meet the needs of the people he was talking to.
Mm,
And then we probably wouldn't have Buddhism today.
right.
And the philosophy of Buddhism, whether you choose to look at the religious side or not, the philosophy of Buddhism is deep, fascinating, and thought-provoking, which is its point. And it's stories again, right? Have I
Hmm.
told you one of my favorite Jataka tales with the two-headed bird?
Yes. Yeah, yeah. You can
Okay.
repeat it. It's
Then
good. It's always a good one to have repeated.
okay, because the image of it just came to my mind,
Mm,
which is why I asked. So, one of my favorite stories from
mm,
the Jataka tales, and it's engraved on a temple in Borobudur in Indonesia. It's the tale of a two-headed bird, and the heads are one on top of the other rather than side by side. And as this bird moves along, it's eating berries and, getting all the food it wants. But the top head is eating from the trees and getting the fresh fruit. The bottom head, it has to eat what's rotten, what's fallen on the floor, what's been trampled on. And the bottom head is getting thoroughly fed up with this, as one might expect.
Mm.
And so says to the top head, "Hey, can you pass me some of the good stuff down here?" And the top head says, "Pfft, no, I can't. I'm eating this stuff. You just get on with what you're doing."
Mm.
And the bottom head becomes so depressed and miserable, it eats poison and dies. So what happens to the top head?
Mm.
Same luck, because it's the same body.
Right.
So that's a story that could be retold in many ways to suit the current environment. There are expressions, cut your nose off to spite your face.
Yeah.
That's one that comes to mind. There's a lot of things that we do that are self-defeating. That is a story of the utmost self-defeat.
Mm. Narada has something to drop that's probably gonna. Some magical practices are gonna stop for a few weeks after this gets dropped. I think the stories don't matter, the spirits don't matter in storytelling. Eventually, the original source of any story is going to be forgotten. That's how we are. Stone crumbles, computer chips can be wiped clean, like everything goes away. Eventually, we'll lose memories of those who've come before. Like how many people like so to take the discovery of Lucy, the pre-human, or one of the earliest ancestors we know about from 2 million years ago. We have really no idea what those people are like, what they were like. They had tools, and I think they had fire, so we know that much. And it was a discovery of another species too that also had tools and fire, and that's some more pre-humans. But
At
we
least
don't
we
know
think
any
we
of
know
them,
that
anything
much.
about them. What's that?
At least we think we know that much.
Yeah, we think we know that much.
We're told. Okay, here's
Right.
the thing. We're told we know that much.
Yeah. And so my point being is that like we don't know any of their stories. We don't know what they worship, what spirits worked with them. We don't know what science, what they knew about nature. But I'm going to put out on a limb and say that there's probably a lot of common things that came up over and over and over again. Even in the stories we've forgotten, we're probably still repeating those same messages because it's part of us. It's who we are as a species, that story. That's why you can watch the same story over and over again in like 10 different movies and people can complain, what's the same story? Okay, but it's told from a different perspective with different
Mhm.
characters and it reaches different people in different ways, but it's the same story. So even before Homo sapiens sapien, like we are, some of those stories have probably been existing of the hero's journey, you know, how to like they probably had their version of the bird, that bird story. Because I forgot the name of the
Well,
bird.
they will have had archetypes,
Right. And
and
so
and they
even
will
your
have had
magic,
their
right?
interpretations. They
Yeah.
will have had their interpretations of archetypes.
Right. And the big story thing with the like that we're saying about the spirits right now, these named spirits, like Chronos. Like at one point they were all one and the same, but it depended on what period in Greek history you were in, how it was played out. And even with the
Mhm.
stories of Lilith, Lilith was the serpent. Lilith was Adam's first wife. Lilith was this monstrous person. No, Lilith is this thing. Like Baba Yaga, eater of children, also your favorite, your best guardian in the forest. Like these stories are so varied about the same character, but you look at the part of that character that works for you, or you make your own stories from your own experiences. Like, I mean, we've said stuff about Baba Yaga. Like I said, she might present as an old crone, but she's still very flirty with me. Like that's not something I hear when people tell stories about Baba Yaga, but I just added that to the story.
Because that's your experience of
Yeah,
it, yeah. And each of those stories that you were just describing, that can be the eater of children or your
mm,
greatest protector in the forest, that would very much depend on, are you coming from a place of fear or faith in the archetype's abilities and gifts and willingness to share them with you? Which is
yeah,
it, fear or faith? And each will get you the lens you're looking at it. So, Lilith was also described as the destroyer of children, I think. I'm not sure she ate them,
yes.
but
She would
in
kill
that
all of
particular
Adam's
version.
descendants, the children. Yeah.
Right. But this is a very fearful, be
Mm,
afraid of this, don't go here. It's like putting a big warning sign up but not from a place of trying to keep you safe, but from a place of trying to keep you ignorant. To
Mm.
that, I say, eat the damned apple, right? Like, go to
Yeah.
that tree, eat the apple, because the apple is your awakening. It's your awareness of your choice. It's that if you think about the biblical story, again, written, right?
Mhm.
But think for the biblical story, eating the apple opened their eyes to the difference between good and evil.
Yeah.
Tell me why that's bad. In what way do we not want to know this? Why
Right.
do we not want to know this? Because if the creator of everything that we've talked about so far created good and evil, you kind of want to know it exists, right? So, in what way would it be bad to know that? Why would you want to keep your creation ignorant of part of your creation and a part that's likely to have a big impact on them? Why
Mhm.
would you want to do that? Doesn't make sense, right? This is where the story got written down, and it must have been corrupted, I would think, many, many times
Yeah.
in order to read as nonsensical as it does now, because it just doesn't stand up to any kind of scrutiny. None.
Yeah. You know, it and I've come across this a few times over the years. So yes, I mean it's probably for most people, especially people listening to this podcast, are probably going, "Yeah, duh." But a lot of what Jesus said was misunderstood. And what the last example I heard was the turn the other cheek one. The reason that turn the other cheek is important, it's not about being meek, and taking hits from people. It's because in Roman law, if you hit someone, you know, that's you can do it once, kind of a thing. It's like that's like a little altercation. But especially for a Roman noble, if you hit someone like a slave or a peasant more than once, you were a noble now. You did the wrong thing. It was you. You were doing the bad thing. You were the bad person in this scenario. So turn the other cheek is basically egging the other person on. Come on, hit me. See how long you have your status for. So it's actually an open act of rebellion to turn the other cheek and say, yeah, go ahead, hit me. You know you want to hit me, but the minute you hit me, you know people are going to think you're an ass. That kind of thing.
Now, what an amazing, I hadn't heard that. I wasn't aware of that, but what an amazing example of how you take the same story,
Yeah,
put a different lens on it, and that puppy looks entirely different. You've gone from the whole meek, oh, hey, I'll be a doormat,
yeah,
to the bring it on, asshole. And
yeah,
those are two very, very different energies, right?
yeah.
Undeniably. That's pretty exciting to have that as an example. And yet look what writing it down did. And I'm not proposing we don't write anything anymore. I'm not saying that. I think it's more bring an awareness to whatever you're reading that
Right.
there's more than one interpretation and you're reading one interpretation. When I was younger, I used to read a lot of biographies. Yeah, nerdy. Okay, so sue me. But I would read biographies and I wouldn't read one about a person I was
Right.
interested in. I would read three different ones.
Mhm.
Why? Because one tells you somebody's opinion. Two gives you an idea that there are some agreements here, but you still have two opinions. Three gives you a more rounded view because then you've got certain things that will be consistent throughout the three. So they're most likely true or pretty
Mhm.
accurate. And then you've got some huge discrepancies that become really interesting because, okay, what really went on here? What's the story behind this? Because there are different interpretations. And
Right.
I was doing that years ago just as a way for me to feel like I knew something about the person that I'd read about.
Right.
Reading one book doesn't really tell you enough.
No,
I
and that.
wanted the different perspective even then before I could name it.
Hmm. Yeah. This whole discussion, right now we're having thing about once you write it down, because it's kind of making me think of that saying, right? The money is the root of all evil, but that's not the complete thing. You can have money and
Right.
do good with it. It's not that you can't write things down. Writing is not the root of all evil. It's the using that like a bludgeon after to beat people to death with it in an argument of, see, it's written down, therefore this is what it is,
Yeah,
and killing it versus,
and it's
yeah, go ahead.
It's looking at it from one perspective,
Hmm.
and that can be the only perspective.
Right.
It's the shutting down of discussion about what this could mean. It's the
Mm.
shutting down of the stories that it can spin off. It's the sort of end of a loop, if you will, that okay, it's written down, therefore it's this, and it can't be anything else. Done, end of story. And by the way, my interpretation is the only version.
Right.
And it's like money corrupting, power
Right.
corrupting. No, it doesn't, but it can be used that way. And that's the problem with taking things literally when you read them. Even when you hear them, certainly, but when you read it, like how many people, certainly in previous last couple of generations,
Mm.
how many people would believe something because they read it in the newspaper? I
Right.
mean, dear God, I don't think so. And how many people still believe what they see on social media? For crying out loud, most of it's
Mm.
bots. Like, come on, people,
Yes, the dead
you're
internet
wasting your
theory.
energy,
Yeah.
right? It's nonsense. We entertain this fiction and consider it to be truth.
Mm.
Well, how much more are we doing that with stories that have been written down for hundreds of
Right.
years and manipulated to suit the purpose of the manipulator? Which is
Right.
why the females are, any female
Mm.
in mythology, they're typically they're bad. They do bad things. They got all these bad demonic um, sides to them that cross this one and she'll do these. She'll turn you to stone, or she'll do bad things to you. Why? Oh, does that
Right.
sound like a little small penis sphere kind of deal?
Yeah.
Does to
Well,
me.
going along with that, I think with the story of Jezebel,
There you go.
that story, when I actually heard it, I was like, she did everything to improve the king's power and his holdings. She got punished for doing it, and he kept the power and he kept the holdings.
That
She
sounds
was
like a
made to pay
woman's
for it.
experience.
Yeah. I'm like, what
Uh-huh.
the hell was that? You know?
Right. And again, it's one of those tools for holding women down and
Mm.
subduing the feminine power, which there's going to be a fight with that because that's not okay, and they're trying to do it more and more.
Yeah.
Right. Speaking politics, just for a brief moment, because
Right.
boy, it's percipient at the moment. Um, Pete Hegseth, the
Yes.
supposed minister of, yeah, anyway,
Trade. Yeah.
him. His pastor, the fact that he has one is absolutely remarkable because, boy, if ever there was somebody who, shall we say, sins in every direction possible at
Mm.
once, it's him. But he has a pastor. And the pastor was recently on film saying, women are the people who people come out of. Women don't count. They should not have a vote. They are subject to the whims and decisions of their men, and so on and so forth. This is current. This is what is being said now. And that dude
Yeah.
leads the prayers in the White House. Like, this is not going well. This is
Mm.
not going in a good direction at all. But for somebody who think, oh, and women who dress like tramps, I quote,
Hmm.
deserve what they're going to get because men
Yes.
can't
Yeah.
control themselves. First of all, I honestly don't think men are such poor creatures that they have no
No.
self-control. That would be a shockingly bad thing to admit. But again, we are having the archetype of Jezebel. It's her fault. She did the thing. She's terrible, even though
Yeah.
actually what she did was good. And you know, it's crazy.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
that's where
like
we're
the
at
story
now.
I heard, I don't know if necessarily she was the most awesome person in the world, but the thing is, she got punished and he didn't, and he's the one who punished her. Like the king
Right.
punished her, and it's like, okay, hold on, she did this for you, and you're accepting the gains of her behavior. You're not
Mhm.
restoring the people that that she acquired the land from, the whatever political power from. Like those people weren't made whole. There was no justice. She would The justice was Jezebel being punished. I'm like, that's not justice.
Right. So that's called being a scapegoat.
Yeah, she was scapegoated. That's it. Like,
That's literally it. Like recently, the head of statistics. who gave the poor job figures then got
Oh yeah,
fired,
yeah,
right? We are living in biblical times at the moment, and they are not the good biblical times,
right.
assuming there were any. But this is not a good thing. And it's an example of where old archetypes that are unhelpful are
Mm,
being brought forward and used again as a weapon. It's exactly what's happening. And they're talking about biblical law now. Can you imagine where that would go?
yeah,
Like it's just crazy. But that's what
yeah,
we're experiencing. And they're using the power of the written word.
yeah. It's interesting. So first, I'll say like, yeah. So the big difference is there's one thing to archive information so that future generations can look at it, and there's another thing to use it as a weapon against people. But so Narada is kind of adding in. What was he saying? Oh, they need the stories to evolve. They need their
Yes.
stories to evolve so they can work better.
Yes. Everybody needs to evolve, including the
Mm,
spirit stories. Yes, exactly. And if our understanding is still 3,000 years old,
right.
uh, oh boy.
Well, and that's true, right? Like, we'll take the popular since you brought up politics of the idea that it's a sin for people to be gay and then try and pass all these laws. But someone had offered the perspective of if you look at the time when that story was written, the Jewish population was very small. So you wanted people to procreate. So you wanted men sleeping with women. You didn't want them sleeping with other men and women sleeping with other women. You wanted to make sure you could grow your population. And that was in one guy's interpretation. I'm like, well, yeah, that actually works. Like some of these rules, but now those rules have to evolve from that. It's like now, because if you look at, and we'll get a little bit controversial, I guess, the larger population, the more gay people you find, and the more LGBTQ people you find, right? And that's kind of for whatever reason, however you want to look at it, whatever your theories are. When populations are small, I think you can't afford to not have people having sex, male, female, heterosexual style. So you want to grow your population because it's a survival issue for your community or whatever. And then so you're saying putting a prohibition on those things so that we can grow as a group. But even saying that, it doesn't mean that you can't be gay. It just means don't have sex. It means go have sex in the way of male female for procreation. Like that's our
If indeed it
controversial.
was actually said, if indeed that was
Yes,
really
if it
what was
was said
written,
that way. But I'm saying that
you
was the
know,
interpretation one person had put, and I thought, well, yeah, I can see that happening. It's like it's not like we're awesome as a species all the time. So I could see someone going, okay, listen, you know what? We need to grow. You guys do this, you know?
it's also interesting though on the subject of LGBTQ and also sexuality
Mm,
preferences and so on, both subjects.
right,
It is bizarre to me that we think there are what, 8+ billion people on the planet,
right,
and every single one of them must be either male or female,
right.
and every single one of them must prefer the opposite sex. Like, why? And what are the odds against that? I mean, you got one chromosome different, and you have somebody
Mm,
with Down syndrome,
right,
right? It takes one tiny little thing, and they have developed differently, and it is visible that they have Down
right,
syndrome. So, in what world, certainly not this one, do we have only the chromosomes that make male or female, and they're very clear and distinct, and it's either one or the other? That is actually not possible to have that. It's not possible that 8 billion people fall into one of those two categories. It is the most ludicrous thing imaginable. It's like, look at eye color.
right.
What? Everybody's got blue eyes or brown eyes? No, that is not how it works. There are many, many different varieties, and you even have some people who have one eye one color and the other eye the other color.
Yeah,
They are perfectly normal and natural. It's just that is how they arrived. So when we focus in on, well, you've got to fit this box or that box, it's us that have the problem. This is
yeah,
this is a nonsense. This is like, again, you're pissing away your magical focus here on something that doesn't matter. What do you care what another person has in their pants? What do you care what they do with it? Why would you care about it? And if they feel they need to express that because they've been suppressed, understand that that person has faced a lot of antagonism in their life and they're shaking it off.
Right.
So, okay, legit, fair, got no problem with it. Like, it doesn't need to be anybody's problem.
Well, it's funny, and I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this in conversation with you, anyways. So a lot of times I'll look at things from the bottom up, like particles up to, their expression in the macro scale or in the macro level, and I'll sometimes wonder how are we even one species? You know, like because we're a
Are
series
we
of
one
cells, right?
species? Because there are a few people out there, I'm kind of wondering, are they the
Right.
same species?
And I use the banal example of all human beings can eat peanuts until a peanut kills you, right? Because you're allergic. Well, does that make you not a human being because the majority of human beings can eat a peanut? And then you start kind of going down and you start, wondering, well, what's normal? Like what makes something part of a group, right? And you're like, well, it's got to be a set number of traits, right? And if you have these traits, you're part of that group. But then you realize people can be part of a group and be missing these traits. So then you start thinking, well, what's the norm? And then you realize no one is exactly the same. There's all these variations in each thing, like from the amount of pigmentation in your skin to the amount of hair in your head to, like your amount of androgens and estrogens and to what frequencies you can hear or see. Like, and then you start realizing, like, no one is, there's a lot of, we more mismatched than we connect. So how are we a species, really? Like, superficially, you can see. But then you start breaking it down to the lower levels, right? It's like, how are we a species? Like, if you really want to
And
go there.
it's another one of those limiting concepts that you have to fit into a
Mm-hmm.
category called normal.
Right.
Well, I would love for somebody to show me an example of a normal person. Find me somebody who fits all the boxes, that ticks all the
Right.
places, that makes them normal. Because I would argue there isn't one. There's just, we all have our own flavor. We all show up with our own stuff, and there doesn't need to be a normal. That's the thing. What we're focused on is a construct that
Right.
doesn't exist. And again, it's sidetracking our attention. It's taking us away from what we could be doing and
Right.
got that image again, pissing it all away on
Mm-hmm.
something that doesn't freaking matter.
Yeah.
If you have autism, or you have ADHD, or you have both, or you're LGBTQ, or you got one eye one color, one eye the other color, you're intersex, you're female, you're
Mm-hmm.
whatever, in what way does it matter? Other than to that person's individual experience, it doesn't matter one stuff to anybody else how that person is. But yet we get diverted into thinking about it and focusing on it and making it mean things that it totally doesn't have to mean. So if
Right.
somebody arrived on the planet looking male and having all the
Mm-hmm.
attributes thereof, or a big chunk of the attributes thereof,
Yeah.
and but they say, well, actually, no, that doesn't feel right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm over here, I'm female, or I'm non-binary. Okay, go with it. Do what you need to do. Be where you need to be. Why is it my business? Why do I
Well,
have to have an
that's
opinion?
yeah.
And
That's
again, people start writing stuff down at this point, and they start having this is normal, this isn't normal.
mm,
Who cares? It doesn't matter. You got to step out of that stuff and maybe spend a little more time in the spiritual work, looking at what's bigger than you, what's bigger than this bullshit distraction. Because seriously, it is just a waste of your energy. I'm not saying
yeah.
the people are, I'm saying the focus on it is. It doesn't matter what the other person is doing. What are you
Right.
doing? What are you looking at? Go
Yeah.
go deal with that, you know? We need to all mind our own business, quite literally. Mind
Mm,
your business, pay
right.
attention to your own business, and deal with that. Make sure your house is in order. What are you working on? Are you clear on your motivations? Are you clear on your intentions, as we've
Yeah.
said before? Are you
Mm,
doing anything with it, or are you just talking? Are you talking a good game, or are you actually getting into some magical practice? Are
mm-hmm.
you afraid? Like, what does that look like? Do you think you're going to hell if you get into some magical practice? I assure you, we're living in it right now. So, there's nothing out there to fear more than this.
Yeah. It kind of makes me wonder on the topic because I went through a period of this, like, when I first discovered or heard about Kabbalah and that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, and then stories about, and then I kind of started running into stories of like Jewish people that the Romans not liking Jewish people because they did magic and stuff like that because there was magical practices involved. Not like the Romans weren't doing that too, but whatever, right? And then I thought, well, okay, well, if Christianity follows Judaism, then what are they talking about? Like, because if you're following the traditions, then you're also doing magic. So what do you like? What are you
Well, of
trying to
course you are.
say? But I mean, the major problem comes from, to my understanding, anyways, and someone who's a scholar of biblical studies and history and stuff like that can correct me. But when the Romans put their weight behind Christianity, a lot of things went weird.
The Romans were rather weird. So, yeah.
Because what I've been starting to see as a pattern is like a lot of taboos in Christianity versus other forms of magic. And it's weird because to me it always seemed like the Romans kind of tried to, or I should say better, the Romans stole from everyone else and for to enrich themselves.
As good conquerors do.
Right. And we have enough examples of that. I mean, we all the running jokes of, the British Museum and stealing artifacts from places and that kind of thing, or that idea.
And by the way, can I just say the somebody from the Louvre
Hmm.
said I was there, and they said this to me. This is not
Right.
something written. This guy said, "Oh yeah, the British Museum. See, what you guys did wrong was you didn't get receipts.
Mm.
We used a middleman and we got receipts, but we did exactly the same thing as the
Right.
British Museum."
Oh, yeah.
And that was somebody from the Louvre. So
Hmm.
people like to beat down on the British Museum,
Hmm.
but a lot of the artifacts
Oh,
that
yeah.
they have would not be in existence anymore if they had given them back when it was demanded.
Hmm.
So is it right to have them there? Is it wrong to have them there? You spend time deciding. I'm not going to
Yeah.
focus in on that, but I'm just going to say that, they are not the only ones. That's typically how museums get their stuff.
Hmm. Yeah. It's just because there's a lot of jokes and a lot of memes about it where, like,
Mhm.
you'll see like artifacts. So there'll be like a scene like someone walks into a room. There's like someone's like worshiping an idol, and then they walk away, and then like someone in a with a pith helmet and a the explorer gear walks by, and you don't see the thing happen, and then the person comes back, and suddenly the idol is gone, and then there's like a thing like you know. This was Sir Nigel or something from the whatever British Museum or whatever, something like stuff like that. That's why I brought it up that way. But yeah, no, all the conquerors pretty much that's a conqueror's thing. You go in, you take all the artifacts, bring them out to yourself, and but I wonder. I think sometimes it's so entrenched that people forget what they're doing isn't right. Like I
To the
was
victor go the
watching,
spoils.
yeah, uh, this to my understanding, like when the I don't know. So one of the Oak Ridge boys, if you're familiar with the Oak Ridge boys, he had a property and had a lot of Indian burial mounds in them. And he was of the, I practice catch and release, which I think is cruel, but I think you might as well eat it if you catch it because you've traumatized it anyway. So you might as well just finish you know, don't traumatize the fish for sport. But anyways, and he had a bunch of burial mounds on his property. So what he did is he took all the artifacts out of them and put them on display in his house. He's like, I'm preserving these artifacts. And I'm like, I don't know. Are you? Because I mean, they were put there so because he was trying to show his great reverence and respect for the indigenous cultures around him, and I'm like, so then why don't you just leave them in the mounds, you know, as intended? But
Many questions.
yeah, but from his perspective, the way he presented it, it sounded like he was trying to do preserve the artifacts. But I'm like,
Well, we all want to present ourselves in the best light,
right.
including to ourselves, right? We will excuse our behavior at the drop of a hat because it would feel dissonant not to,
Mhm.
right? Like we all want to be liked, we want to be the good person, we want to be sure we're right, all the things, because that's the safest place to be. And anything that's a little bit iffy, we're going to be able to explain away fairly quickly
Right.
because that helps us to feel okay. It helps us to feel like we're the good person we told ourselves we were, right? People lie to themselves all the time, which
Yeah.
is why I found it so interesting when you had the fire breath and you
Mm,
could see it curling back in on somebody who was lying even to themselves.
right.
How many times do people lie to themselves without being particularly conscious of it? Because it's simply, some might call it rationalization, right? Oh, well, I did that because da da da. And passive aggressive, which
Mm,
Canadians are pretty famous for being passive aggressive.
yeah.
Some call it friendly, some know it better. Um, but the passive aggressive thing, that is a whole manipulation of
Mm,
what is quote unquote good and what isn't, and how we're going to make it seem okay.
right.
So, and that's a perfect example. Let me just take all these artifacts
Mm,
out of the mounds and I'm going to put them up in my house so I can enjoy them every day. But oh, hey, I didn't do it for my benefit. I did it for you guys.
mm.
That's a good, noble thing, then, right? Bullshit. But we do that. We convince ourselves of all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Like, because one of the things that made me think about that, right, was because, well, some people may not see anything wrong with catching and releasing, but it's like, why did you need to go and fish if you're not going to eat it?
Mhm.
That's you trying to do something. It's the same thing with, shit, I lost the wording. Oh, yeah. So, it's that I've heard it only recently, but the idea of if you like a flower, you pick it. If you love a flower, you tend to it
You
and
let it
help it
grow.
grow. And
Mhm.
to me, it's kind of the same thing. It's like, no, you pick that flower, and the catch release, you're picking the flower again. You're not, you know, helping the fish. Like, and because I've heard people who like went from hunting because they wanted to keep up their skills, so they went from hunting with a rifle to hunting with a camera. So they would still track, they would still do all the stuff they used to do hunting, and then when they get close up, they take a picture. They wouldn't kill it. So
Mhm.
it's like there's a way of doing it where you don't have to keep. You're just trying to justify those behaviors versus trying to actually do the thing you're trying to do. You're just justifying your behavior.
And that's a false narrative that we're all prey to, right? And when somebody takes the written word and they use it against you,
Mm-hmm.
they play on that. They bring that in. And typically we being as a species, don't like to change our stated stance on something,
Mm-hmm.
change our minds on something. Uh, Look at politics, for example, for somebody to say, oh crap, I voted for the wrong guy. Okay. First of all, that would be an incredibly brave thing to say because you know that anybody that hears you is going to have an awful lot to say and none of it will be polite, regardless of which side
Mm-hmm.
they're on, right? So, what would be the benefit to you then to admitting that mistake?
Right.
Unless you had an inner sense of integrity that you hold dear, there isn't a lot that would encourage you to do that, right? Because you're just going to get shit from everybody. So we live in an interesting time where people are demanding of each other, believing things very, very easily, and refusing to acknowledge when they receive new information. And all the while, all of this is a massive distraction from what we actually need to be doing, from the bigger work, from the spiritual work. The more you get entrenched in this mundane nonsense that we're being distracted with, the less you can pay attention to the spiritual world, the less connected you are,
Mm-hmm.
and the more easy to control you are.
Right.
That's the thing. If you're listening to these stories and you're listening to the positions of people, oh well, that one knows because, you know, reasons, whatever. This is the minister, or this is the, insert position here. Somebody gave them a job. It doesn't mean anything else. It means not one thing. It doesn't tell you anything about their integrity, their honesty, their worthiness, their connection to what's
Yeah.
real. Tells you nothing. So, and yet we get hooked into this, and it's like, oh, well, that person said this, and this person did that, and okay, what we need to look at is where are we as a species trending, and what can we do about that?
Yeah.
If you're okay with the direction we're going in, then you won't feel the need to do anything. And you're probably not somebody that would hang out with me for very long. Um, and if you're not okay with it, all right, okay. And now what? What are you here to do actually? Because we all have a purpose. So, for example, with the work that I do with human design, with behavior analysis, with all the other tools that I've got, the work that I do is to help people break cycles. They break free of unhelpful patterns so that they can live a life that's more theirs. That's my purpose. That's my point. That's what I'm here for. That's what I'm doing. And all my life experience has helped to hone me into somebody who can do that. So that's what I'm here for. And I'm navigating that despite everything that's going on, and sometimes because of everything that's going on, right? So everybody has a purpose. The question is, do you know yours? And how spiritual is it? Where are you connected, at
Right.
least? It's a question I'd like the listener to ask themselves. Where are you connected?
Yeah.
Where are you disconnected? Because it's a choice. You don't have to be disconnected.
Right. And that's a good point. And so now Narada's kind of thrown out another idea because again, so, talking about writing things down and people having one official interpretation of things. It's like the stories aren't to maintain a tradition. They're not to maintain a line of secession. They're there to inspire the person who listens. If it's not inspiring someone anymore, then the story has to change. It's not
Yes.
about all these, I'm a scholar of this and I know the history of that. That's all good. That's all fine. You can do that. There's nothing wrong with it. But that's not the point. The point is
Right.
that if the story has to change, then it has to change.
Yes. In fact, a scholar of that
Mhm.
that subject would be helpful when they look at how has it changed?
Right. Yes, absolutely.
What are the different iterations of this? What are the
Hmm.
different myths? What are the, how else has it shown up? So, for example, if you
Right.
look at the flood, right, Noah, I think all the traditions except Chinese have
Hmm.
something similar.
Right.
And creation theories,
Hmm.
how many creation theories are there? Was it the raven? Was it the turtle?
Mm.
Was it, was it the Big Bang? Was it, a God sitting on a cloud saying, "Oh, hey, I'm kind of bored. Let me do this thing." You know,
Yeah.
what was it? What's your version? Who's to say which is right and which is wrong?
Mm.
I think I mentioned to you before, I'm not sure if it was on the podcast though. I was in Egypt with my two kids, and the youngest one's really into ancient Egypt.
Right.
Like, he
Hmm.
created a board game at the age of 5 that
All right.
had very complex questions about ancient
Mm.
Egypt. Like, he was really into it. And we were in the temples, Aswan, temples at Aswan,
Right.
and there's most amazing drawings in there,
Mm.
not just hieroglyphics, but incredible drawings. And yes, we did mention it on the episode where we
Yeah.
were talking about Ra. And you've got the moon chasing the
Mm.
sun, or it could be the other way around, right?
Mhm.
But
You're
one
right.
is born, lives for the day, and then dies, and then there's a rebirth, and the cycle continues. And these two women from Singapore,
Mm.
who are Christian, and they considered themselves very
Mm.
Christian, were openly laughing at the thought that this was what they believed. Now they're laughing at something that's a few thousand years old, so that alone makes
Mm.
the thing ridiculous that they would laugh at it. But in what way is their faith so different? I did ask them that. They didn't like the question. But it people get like that. They get very, well, my story is better than
Mm.
your story, so your story is ridiculous. And that's basically what religious fights are, right? Is my story is better than your story. And this is the only version it can be.
Yeah.
Good Lord, people, get yourselves out of preschool and into
Mm.
kindergarten at least, would you?
Yeah.
Like, seriously, this is very. immature.
Yeah, Family Guy had a really good analogy on, did a really good scene on that. I think it was what was the name? Oh, I don't know. Anyways, so the one guy said, "This is my belief," and he's like, "That's crazy. Everyone knows it's the listen." I think he said a few things before setting it up. And then he goes like, and then God had a kid with a virgin woman, and then became that guy, and then kind of explained the whole story. And it's like when you're listening to it, it's like, yeah, this sounds really ridiculous, the whole story. And he's like, and that's how you know it's true. And it's like, hold on, what?
Exactly, precisely. So frankly, I could see the point to the drawing
Yeah,
and beautiful colors and everything still, but I could see their point. They
hmm
they were going by what they could see, which makes a hell of a lot more sense than this other esoteric nonsense that they're putting forward and saying this is the only truth. Like, if you want to accept it as true, okay, knock yourself out. But it's not your business to hold other people to your truth.
right,
And that is a sentence I'd like you to put an underline on. It's not your business to hold other people to your truth.
right,
What is true for you is not necessarily true for the person in the next village, hence the different stories, right?
right,
We don't have to believe the same. And God forbid we should think the same. I mean, there's a reason we have a taboo on, sex with your sister.
mm,
It's like we're not supposed to do that. The inbreeding thing's kind of
right,
bad. It doesn't do good things for the genetics, etc. Thinking the same way is the same problem,
mm,
right? It doesn't do anything for the development of concepts, the development of critical thinking skills, the ability to progress as a species. You can't do any of that shit if you're in an incestuous relationship with what
right.
somebody has said is the true story.
Yeah. It's interesting because if it's not apparent yet, the goal of this episode from Narada Muni's perspective is to have people realize to divorce the story from the entity, to divorce the story from the wisdom.
And holy
Because,
smokes, channeling like anything here. I'm going to need to lie down afterwards.
yeah, well, because like when we had Ryubu, or if you want Fujin, Fujin is the more commonly known version. So he adopted the Ryobu name, the least common version, so he can change his image. And basically, as Narada is saying, in 3,000 years from now, no one may know who Narada Muni is, but he'll still be around. And he'll just be
Right.
known by a different name. And there'll be a whole bunch of different stories. They'll probably end up maintaining the same theme because he does have an influence on how he wants to appear. But the name will be gone. The stories as told today will be gone. And there'll be new stories. And there'll be a new identity, a new metaphor for him to show up as. Same thing with all of them. All the spirits we work with right now are all going to have new identities at some point and new
And that's
stories.
what we need.
Yeah.
That's what we need. We can't stay stagnant. What is stagnant becomes ill.
Mhm.
Like we can't do that. And when people look backwards, even worse, and say, oh, but I kind of want it to be that way. Let's make America great again. We'll go back to the
Mhm.
1930s. Whoopsie fucking do. What a brilliant idea.
Mhm.
First of all, it's totally not possible. It's not even implausible. It's also not possible.
Right.
But it wasn't great then. There's nothing great then.
Mhm.
You're confusing television shows with reality. Oh yes, let's think. Who's in charge of all of this? Oh, I see where that came from. Yeah,
Yeah. Well,
reality
even,
TV. Huh.
you know, because it's funny, because even to go back to, okay, if you look at 50s as being the peak, well, what happened to make it that way? When people came back from World War II, the government put a lot of money into the veterans to say, here, you want to build a business? Here's some money. Here, you need this. Here's some money. So a lot of money was given from the government. So there was a lot of socialism. So that ideal time you're looking for was brought to you by socialism.
And women also couldn't do a whole heap of
Right.
anything. And that
But I
was a
mean,
big problem too.
but for the people who are keeping that idea and who are praising it and want that back, that's brought to you by socialism, not the stuff they're doing right now. The stuff that you're doing right
Uh-huh.
now, trying to get back to when America was great, it's not going to work because you're taking what happened when America was crappy. That's the method you're using. You're looking at robber barons. You're looking at, you know, kids working at 12-hour days, like at 5 years old in a textile factory. That's
Yep.
what you voted for. It was painted
Yep.
as the socialism that the soldiers got when they came back from World War II, but you're really getting the method that put kids in textile factories at 5 years old. I mean, I
Yep.
don't know if 5 years old maybe a bit of an exaggeration, but yeah, child labor. That's what that's
The
the method you're using, trying to get what
uh-huh.
socialism gave you.
Uh-huh. No, it's pretty wild. But the idea of going backwards, like
Right.
even let's not be political for a moment and say, look at the
Yeah.
pandemic.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody had one of those. So when you look at the pandemic, oh, I wish things could go back to how they were before the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic. Well, okay, not happening. It's like saying, I
Yeah.
wish we could go back to the Renaissance. I wish we could go back to the Middle Ages. Oh, wait, we might end up there. But we're not. I wish we could go back to the Industrial Revolution. No, because you already know what you know. You
Mm-hmm.
can't not know it.
Right.
It'll take time for the education system to be that screwed. But, it's looking backwards isn't the way. Looking forwards to see what's possible. Yes, it's a little scary because you don't know what that is yet. That's the whole point of being connected. Got to be connected
Mm-hmm.
to all parts of life: spiritual, physical, emotional, mental, all the parts of life. Anything you shut off will suffer. So
Right.
if you don't have that spiritual connection, if you're not prepared to go and find out what's there, then that part of you is not going to be well. So my call to people now who are still listening to us is be brave. Take a deep breath and go see what's out there for you. Go see what's possible. Don't go with fear. Go with openness to what's possible.
Mm-hmm.
What's in it? What's in it for you? What have you got that you can explore and grow from? Because that's the real gold, right? Money doesn't mean jack. It can be devalued in a day.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not a we need it because it's a currency, but we don't need it as a sense of worth or value.
Right.
You get that from growing, from being who you came to be.
Yeah.
So you have to work for it.
Yeah. And you have to
And
not
you
get
work
stuck.
from, here's the other thing is you work from who you are, not from some external
Right.
structure. External structure cannot really support you. It can hold you in. It's like bars of a jail. It can
Mm-hmm.
keep you in, but it doesn't hold you in a nourishing way. You don't grow from an external structure. So no need for rules and rule books in what we're doing.
No. In fact, because those rules may fall apart later on.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting. This again, not that I'm trying to control the episodes anymore, but still, this I was not expecting this particular. It's right because for a god who does art, who does music, which is a form of storytelling, when you do music, it's interesting
No
that
doubt.
the push is the. Well, no, I'm going to change that tact because it's because he does storytelling that he knows the story has to evolve and sometimes has to be forgotten to make way for the new thing to spread the actual message in the story. There
Yeah,
you go.
I like that. Yep.
Yeah. So
But
sometimes
art
you have
is
to
also
destroy to make the new.
storytelling.
Hmm. Yeah.
Art is another way of, in fact, I like personally, I like art better than the written version of the
Right.
stories. The storytelling, because it's still open to interpretation quite
Hmm.
easily. You have the images, but what do they mean? Okay, go for it. Like look at a Tibetan mandala. Well, you can know what the official storyline is, which will change from teller to teller,
Hmm.
but also what do you see? There's a lot of imagery in there.
Yes. Yeah. And it's funny, right? Because we have been pushing that whole thing, community through embettering yourself as an individual,
Yeah.
right? Because your work will then spread out. The byproduct of your work will help other people. So yeah, you can tell stories and you can do all those things to bring people in, to entice people, to invite people. But in the end of the day, it is still your interpretation, how you receive whatever's told to you, how you receive that inspiration is what matters. It's you as an individual, not anyone else. telling you, which is a big problem we have right now. There's people who make their whole careers out of telling you how to interpret things.
Yeah.
So it's like,
And they hold power that way.
yeah,
And people listen to them and say, yeah, yeah, that's right. That's right. Based on what? Did you measure it against your life
yeah,
experience? Did you measure it against anything? No? Huh. And you can get really suckered that way.
hmm
You see it time and time again. Ponzi schemes kind of work that way, you know?
yeah,
You get suckered in and you have to be willing to be suckered in. You have to be available for it. Ooh, I just got some big lightning. So if
mm.
my we're getting some storms over the mountains here, which is interesting. So if I
Yeah. I got a
suddenly
storm
cut
coming
out
here too, actually.
and it's just yep, got it going now.
Yeah,
I do like a good storm, but just so you are aware, if I suddenly disappear, it's probably
yeah,
because my computer went kablooey.
yeah, yeah. So that's the big lesson. It's about you as an individual and how you understand the stories, and don't be weighed down by the stories because they will change, and they have to change over time. You can take it into your mundane life to say just enjoy the media you consume and don't worry what anyone else is telling you. How you choose to interpret what you learn in a movie or reading in a book or looking at a painting or whatever, or looking at a meme or whatever. That's for you, and that's what's going to help you go forward. It doesn't matter what anyone else is interpreting it as. You have your own story, you make your own story, you contribute to the greater story. It's on you for you. And I just want to kind of add, like, in terms of other people's interpretations, if someone says something to you and it rings true for you, so they invoke a thought in you by giving their own interpretation, that's fine. Again, it falls back to the it's not the money that's evil, it's the lust for that money. It's the pulling up the negative aspects of, writing things down, or the negative aspect of giving advice. It's the no. It's the listening to what it can trigger to you. Like, I've gotten a reading before. I went to psychic and I got a reading, and nothing they told me was true, but I was piggybacking on their signal and getting everything I needed. So that's the interesting, right? Like, even though the person doing the reading was telling me one thing, I had a
Mhm.
connection to what they were getting. So I knew it was like, yeah, thanks for the information, but here's what I actually got from that same flow you were pulling from.
Right.
Yeah,
And as the Buddha said when challenged, well, you listen to the teaching that you're given and you measure it against your life experience and what
right.
you know to be true. If it seems good to you, take it and use it. And if it doesn't seem good to
Yeah,
you, put it to one side.
right.
And, yeah, there are certain Buddhist teachings I keep bringing up because they're really good. They work. I find them to be good now, so I use them now. We've got a lot of lightning going on here.
Mm, yeah.
I'm
Uh,
probably getting the message here that we have to end.
yeah. Well, I was gonna say because I think we're starting to beat a dead horse there. We're starting to repeat the same thing again. But
Sometimes it needs to be resaid, but
yeah,
yeah, I think we've said what we came to say.
yeah. And Narada Muni, he's like, yeah, no, we're good. I've said what I need to say, and we've
Stop
gotten
talking,
across.
people.
Yeah, we've gotten what we need to do. So yeah, okay. He just waved goodbye. He's like, yeah, I'm done. All right. So to follow Narada Muni, so I've already mentioned this to Michaela. He's being followed by Oya. So try to think. So she's a some of you may recognize this word. She's an Orishi. So from West Africa. I'm trying to think of the name. I want to say Yorembe, but I don't know if that's the right wording. That's the culture of origin she comes from and she's a goddess of the storm. But she is again a warrior goddess, a powerful goddess. She was it she fought off an army by transforming into a buffalo to show her strength. She's married to the god of thunder, but
And
she's
they're both
not
here
a
today.
passive, yes, she's not a passive partner. The storm does not exist without the two of them. She is a co-ruler of the sky.
She's got a lot to say right this minute. I can tell
Yeah.
you that. There's a
And
lot going on.
she came to me first. This is how I came across realizing it was her. Well, I mean, I'd never heard of her before, but how I got to where she was. It was the first I saw what you would a typical Grim Reaper, like a cloaked skeletal figure, and then that was like, okay, got your attention, good. And then it disappeared, and then a I'm not an expert in the different cultures on the continent, so but I recognized, oh, this is an African woman, and I was like, okay, so I'm dealing with an African goddess here, and then kind of worked my way to, okay, that African goddess, looked it up. Oh yeah, but she's not a death goddess specifically. She's a keeper of basically she's the guardian of the places where the dead are, and so she
Hmm.
does the transfer between because Dio Ricci, they're gods, and someone correct me if I'm saying that wrong, but a lot of them were human before, and then they ascended, and that's her story. She was always a very spiritual person, very spiritually connected to the spiritual world and the material world, and eventually that brought her to ascending to becoming a goddess. So
On,
that's who we're going to be talking to next.
on that note, I really have to go because we have a major storm rolling right in right now.
Alrighty. So keep all that in mind, people. And once again, I'm Daniel Dubois.
I'm Michaela Gaffinstone.
Until next time.
Until next time.